In this world, a relentless surge of human mutation to animals has driven a man to extraordinary lengths in a desperate attempt to rescue his beloved wife. However, he also gets faced with a new challenge, as this perilous goal will not only test his resolve, but also shape the very essence of his existence in unimaginable ways. Hello, welcome back to I Am Movies. Today we're looking into the 2023 sci-fi adventure film called The Animal Kingdom. But before we jump into the details, be aware there are spoilers. Now let's get right into it. The movie begins when a man named Francois takes his son Emile to visit his wife, who had been taken to a medical facility for mutants. Recently, people have been rapidly mutating into different animals, and scientists find it hard to explain. While stuck in traffic, Emile gets down from the car after an argument with Francois, which starts after telling him that he isn't interested in visiting his mutant mother. As Francois goes after Emile, they both witness an ambulance burst open, as it is transporting a mutant, revealing a man with wings struggling with medical personnel. Soon, Francois and Emile find themselves face to face with the mutating man, but he leaves without hurting them. With this, Emile and Francois return to their car, and they drive off to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor reveals to them that her wife is responding to treatment, and that she'll soon be transported to a new facility called the Southern Reception Center. With this, Francois reveals to the doctor that he'll be moving close to the center with Emile so that they can see her wife more often. Afterward, we now see Lana in her ward, and Francois spends some time with her. Though hesitant, Emile also agrees to see her after much persuasion by his father. Days later, Francois and Emile move to a cottage close to the Southern Reception Center. Although Emile doesn't like the place, Francois manages to cheer him up, showing him the positive sides of things and giving him a reason to smile. The next day, Emile transfers to a new school in the area and gets introduced to his classmates. However, a girl named Nina picks interest in Emile and soon begins to ask him multiple questions. Emile finds Nina's questions humorous and seems to like her too, as he notices she's been staring at him all through the class. After school, Emile goes to Francois' new job where he works as a chef. While there, Emile gets introduced to Francois' co-worker, Naima, and the owner of the restaurant, Jacques. Subsequently, Jacques welcomes Emile to the place, telling him that the city is nice except for the new mutant holding center that the government has just built, which he referred to as Monster House. Afterward, Naima asks Emile if he's scared of the mutant and assures him that there is nothing to be scared about. Later that night, a heavy storm accompanied by lightning and thunder hits the city, causing the lights to go off. Emile wakes up and finds Francois trying to fix it. As Emile looks outside, he briefly sees a mutant standing in the rain, and moments later finds out it's gone. The next day, as Francois and Emile clear out fallen trees from the back of the cottage, he gets a call from the police, telling him that the vehicle transporting Lana and other mutants to the new facility was involved in an accident from the storm of the previous night. Francois rushes to the site with Emile and finds out that most of the mutants have escaped. Francois tries to force his way through to the crash site in order to get a closer look at things, but the police stop him. Moments later, a senior police officer named Julia intervenes and asks him for his wife's name. Subsequently, she reveals to him that his wife is among the missing mutants, and that they are still searching for her alongside 40 others. Julia asks Francois to leave more details about his wife that would help them with their search. Later that night, Francois hangs his clothes and Emile's on trees at the back of the cottage to draw Lana close to them, stating that she'll follow the smell since her senses have been heightened by the mutation. Although Emile doesn't like the idea, but he still manages to support his father. The next day in school, Emile gets lost in thought during sports activities and draws away from participating. However, the sports teacher notices Emile and immediately orders him to join the weaker team in a tug-of-war competition. During the competition, Emile's teammates fall to the ground, but Emile manages to single-handedly hold the line till his teammates join him again, and they eventually win the match. Immediately after this, Emile notices strange changes in his fingers, showing that he might be mutating. Meanwhile, Emile's classmates approach him and invite him to a party, teasing him that Nina will be happy to see him there. Afterward, Emile rushes home to check himself out, and this is when he realizes that he's already growing wolf nails. Emile pulls out the nails from his fingers and checks the mirror for other visible features. Emile screams in pain as he finds out that his spine is already protruding, and his dog, Albert, manages to comfort him. Later that evening, Francois goes shopping for items as he plans to search for Lana in the forest. Soon, Francois meets Julia in the mall and asks her if she has any updates about Lana. Julia reveals to him that the military has taken over the search operation, and that the police have only been tasked with taking care of the soldiers. While they are still talking, they hear that a mutant was spotted in the food section of the mall. Francois assumes it's Lana and begins to call out to her. However, he soon realizes it's not Lana, but another mutant octopus. The mutant octopus tries to run away after stealing some seafood, but Julia manages to hold it down. Afterward, Julia thanks Francois for helping her in the mall and warns him against his planned search. The next morning, Francois tells Emile about his plans to go search for Lana the next day and asks him to come along. Emile tells him that he has a party to attend, but Francois insists that he needs to accompany him. Subsequently, Francois agrees to let him go to the party, but asks him to come back early so he'll get enough sleep before they set out. At the party, Emile finds himself staggering as he begins to react to the mutation, and his friends offer him a pill thinking he was getting tipsy. However, as Nina offers Emile the pill, he licks it off her hand like an animal, leaving his friends in shock. Feeling embarrassed, Emile decides to walk away from them and belches loudly as he runs into a nearby forest. The next morning, Emile wakes up in the forest and realizes that his mutation is progressing. He quickly rushes home to check himself out and tries to hide it from his father. Afterward, they set out for the planned search with Albert. On their way, Emile asks Francois how he felt when Lana started to mutate, trying to know how Francois would react when he eventually finds out about his. As they continue the search, Francois begins to scream Lana's name, hoping she'll hear it and come to them. On their way back late in the night, they decide to play Lana's favorite song, and Emile joins Francois as they both call out to Lana. They later camp in the forest, sleeping in their car. The next morning, Emile realizes that his wolf fingers are growing back again. However, he soon gets distracted as Albert chases something into the woods. Emile follows Albert into the woods where he sees a mutant lizard. However, Emile soon gets attacked by the human mutant bird they saw earlier. As the mutant bird hits Emile, Albert barks at it and rushes to inform Francois. Francois sees the mutant bird hurting Emile and manages to scare it away, but Emile still gets injured in his arm. Afterward, they drive out of the woods to get treatment for Emile. However, Emile refuses to go, threatening to jump out of the car, as he realizes his secret will eventually be exposed. However, Francois stops the car close to a police checkpoint and Julia soon approaches. Seeing the wound on Emile's hands, she inquires to know what had happened. Emile tells her that he was bitten by his dog, and Julia takes him to get treatment. Back at home, Emile intentionally messes with the stitches just to lick the blood off them, as his mutation continues to progress and his senses get heightened. The next day, Emile gets agitated during a laboratory test, as he can't stand noises coming from the lab animals due to his heightened sense of hearing, and he freaks out. After school, Nina takes Emile to her place. Feeling hungry, Emile asks her if he can get a drink from her fridge. However, Emile finds a dead bird in it, and Nina explains to him that she intends to donate it to the mutants as food. Later that day, Emile goes fishing and soon finds himself munching on raw fish. Afterward, Emile sees the mutant bird training itself to fly and offers it a fish too. The mutant introduces himself as Fix and advises Emile to leave the forest, stating that only the strong survive there. Seeing the amount of wounds on Fix, Emile takes him to the riverbank and helps him prepare a safe place for his flight training. On his way home, Emile gets frustrated as he finds it hard to ride his bicycle and angrily abandons it. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Francois gets attacked by a mutant seal, but Naima manages to convince the mutant seal to stop being aggressive, showing that she knows who the mutant seal is. However, the seal's leg later gets entangled in boat anchor chains and begins to panic, subsequently causing a commotion in the restaurant. With this, Francois realizes that Lana might be close by, so he rushes into the nearby woods to call for her. Moments later, Lana appears to Francois as a fully mutant bear and later walks away into the woods. Shortly after, the police and military men arrive at the scene. Naima reveals to Francois that the mutant seal is her younger sister, and Francois tells Julia that he saw Lana. Soon, Emile shows up and tells Francois that someone has stolen his bike. At the same time, soldiers march into the forest as they begin to search for the mutants. The next day in school, Emile pulls out one of his teeth during lunch, causing his friends to leave irritated. But Nina, being a smart lady, begins to suspect that he is mutating. After school, Emile visits Fix and watches him do his flight training. Afterwards, Emily helps Fix treat his broken nose and the two begin to bond. Later that night, Julia and Francois go deep into the forest in search of Lana, but can't find her. However, they see Emile's bike lying in the forest. Later that night, Francois fixes Emile's bike and later discovers that their sink is clogged. As he attempts to clear it out, he finds animal hair and nails in it. With this, Francois realizes that Emile had been mutating and had intentionally abandoned his bike because he couldn't ride it anymore. When Emile returns home, Francois confronts him, but Emile denies it. So Francois brings out the bike, asking Emile to ride it to prove him wrong. Emile refuses to ride it and later attempts to run away, but Francois wrestles him to the ground and hugs him as they both begin to cry. Later, Francois asks Emile if he hasn't told anyone and decides to help him conceal his mutating features by cutting his nails, blocking his ears to reduce his heightened sense of hearing, and also helping shave his furs. Afterward, Julia comes around to meet Francois, and they both set out to continue their routine search for Lana. The next day, Emile visits Fix and soon realizes that Fix has lost his voice. Emile hugs Fix as he promises to help him find a solution and support him in his quest to fly. However, Fix immediately climbs to the top of a tree and soon begins to soar in the air, proving to Emile that his persistence finally paid off. Later that day, while serving at a carnival, Francois learns from Jacques that Emile has just arrived. Francois goes to confront Emile, stating that he's putting himself in danger by going to public spaces where he can be easily exposed. Francois tries to cut Emile's visible wolf nails with a knife, but Emile refuses, and it leads to a fight. Emile bites Francois on his arm, but Francois gets him off by putting a knife to his throat. Afterward, Emile leaves the room and joins the carnival where he meets Nina. Nina takes him to a secluded place on a cornfield, where she finds out that Emile is a mutant, confirming her suspicion. However, they end up having an intimate moment. Back at the carnival, Emile gets offered a glass of beer but excuses himself to avoid taking it. However, one of his friends who had seen him with Nina earlier follows him to the bathroom and confronts him about his mutations, using a loud device to irritate his hearing. Emile manages to knock him down, but he soon begins to scream, raising an alarm about a mutant attack. Emile escapes into the cornfield and the men soon take up arms to hunt him down. Subsequently, Fix comes to Emile's aid, attacking some of the men as he watches his friend run to safety, as the men continue to aim at him. Emile manages to get to the forest safely, but Fix soon gets shot, causing him to crash to the ground. Emile holds Fix in his arms as he watches him take his last breath. Shortly after, the men arrive to find Fix lying dead and they end the hunt, thinking he was the mutant they were initially hunting. The next day, Emile returns to the forest and soon begins to feed on wild fruits. As days went by, Emile's features continued to become more prominent. Later, Emile decides to venture deep into the forest in search of his mother. That night, Emile falls asleep under a tree but wakes up to find himself in a cave, showing that someone must have taken him there. Emile finally comes face to face with Lana, and they both stare at each other compassionately before she leaves. Walking through the forest, Emile finds a lot of mutants living there. However, soldiers soon launch an attack on them, throwing gas canisters and taking the mutants into custody. Subsequently, Emile gets taken to the military base, since they do not notice any of his mutating features. Francois arrives at the hospital to get Emile out, but the officer offers Emile a pen and paper to sign himself out, but he can't hold the pen properly. The officer finally realizes that Emile is a mutant, but Francois knocks him out before can raise an alarm. Francois stamps the papers and uses them as a pass to get Emile out of the base. On their way, Emile tells Francois that he met his mother, and they both discuss about their favorite memories together. Afterward, Francois sees the police coming after them and begins to speed up, promising Emile that he won't let them take him to the facility. After a while, Francois realized that he cannot do this forever. He finally decided that Emile and his wife Lana is not for this human world anymore. It's time for him to face the truth that they need to be together and away from humans. So he stops the car and asks Emile to run into the woods and live free. Emile, although hesitant, he looks at his father with tears in his eyes and screams as he runs through the wood at blazing speed. And this is where our movie ends. If you'd like to see us recap any other movies or topics you have in mind, just drop a comment and let us know. And don't forget to hit the like button, share this recap, and subscribe to stay updated for the next one. Until next time.